Whether it's from losing a job or financial difficulties, countless of Americans, including many Christians, are seeking help for anxiety or depression. Well, in Breaking Through Depression, Dr. Donald Hall, a counseling psychiatrist with over 20 years of experience in the field, integrates medical, psychological, and spiritual knowledge as he helps those suffering from depression reach emotional wholeness. And Doctor, we're glad that you can be with us today. I'm sure, as we're talking about the holidays, a lot of people dealing many times with depression or maybe just the holiday blues and not even quite sure what the difference is. So what is the difference between someone who may be depressed, or what is depression actually?
Well, in the book I wrote this book about depression. It's called Breaking Through Depression, and I explain how depression is really a brain problem for a lot of people. When you get enough stress for enough time, it actually affects your brain. And then I've also written out a plan that gives them a holistic guide to healing. I think there's a lot of emphasis on medication. There's a lot of emphasis on take a pill and you'll get better.
Right.
And this book shows that counseling and spiritual growth can be a part of the recovery.
Right. Now, what led you to the field of psychiatry and specifically with a focus in depression?
I have a brother who has chronic depression. He's probably had it for 20 years. Had an aunt who had serious mental illness. And I guess God brought me to this place through my experiences with them.
Now, what is kind of like the spectrum of, like Kelly's saying, holiday season, so it's a happy time for a lot of people. Sometimes for other people it's not such a happy time. The difference between blues and kind of feeling down to where you need to recognize, hey, I think we got to deal with this situation on a deeper or a more aggressive level.
Yeah, depression is a complicated illness. It's not like diabetes where you can do a blood test and find out you have it. Depression is a really complicated personal problem, and the way I draw the line is when it starts to affect people's ability to love their families, to do their job. It's not just a sad day. It's not just crying after loss of a loved one. It's a condition that stays with a person for weeks, months, sometimes years. It's a disability. When sadness becomes a disability, then you would look at it as a clinical depression.
What are some of the indicators?
Indicators of depression, most common ones are loss of interest in life. If you used to like to play bingo, or you used to like to hunt, or if you're losing interest in the things that give you pleasure, that's a good sign of depression. If you can't sleep well, if you're not usually an irritable person, but you're yelling at the kids when you come home from work, or yelling at the kids to clean up their toys more often and more angrily than usual. Irritability can also be a sign of depression.
Right. As I mentioned in the opening, Christians dealing with depression. How come, why do Christians end up dealing with depression? Because everything that we're taught, especially in the Word, the joy of the Lord is my strength, and you should be full of joy. How come Christians end up being depressed?
Well, they rely on God, which is good. I mean, if you want to deal with your depression, or you want to deal with other struggles, loss of a job, and different tragedies in our life, it's good to lean on God. But I think Christians miss the fact that, and a lot of the lay public also miss the fact that depression can become a brain problem. There's a lot of new science. I like science. I'm a psychiatrist. A lot of new science coming out that shows that parts of the brain will malfunction with depression. It's not to the point where we can do a test and put you in a scan and say, oh, you have depression, but there's pretty clear science that parts of the brain will be damaged by depression. It's a stress injury of a sort. You're going to have stress injury on your knee, a stress injury on your back, on your heart. Yeah. So depression is similar. It releases stress hormones in your body. Those stress hormones get into your brain. Brain is a very delicate organ, and it can be damaged by these stress hormones. And so
there's physical consequences or fruit to the depression.
Yeah, and Christians often don't look at it that way. I think, with good intentions, they read the Bible and they look for signs of hope, and they look for ways to believe in God. But I think they can also believe in God for healing through other ways, and that may mean medication or professional counseling.
How can someone tell whether it is a physical, or mental or a spiritual problem?
Separating, I guess that's what people want to do, is pick out one way of getting help. Is it medical, is it counseling, or is it spiritual? And it's all three. people that, whether you're a pastor or whether you're a school teacher or a stay-at-home mom, it affects all people the same way. It affects the body, the mind, and the spirit. And so you can't just tease it out and say it's one issue when it becomes a clinical depression.
Right. So you're focused on the holistic, the whole man.
Yes.
It's not just simply, okay, take this pill and you'll feel better, and as long as you take this pill, you'll be okay. You want to address the deeper root issues.
Yeah, and Christians often look at it as a spiritual failure. You know, it's like, why didn't I pray harder? Or maybe I should read some more Bible verses. You know, why isn't God healing me of this depression? I'm sad. I can't get out of bed. I can't be involved in the things I like to do. Christians frequently look at depression as a spiritual failure, and I'm here to tell them there's another way to look at this, and God can heal you through other ways than just prayer.
Right. As Stephen mentioned, you know, one of the things that you really do is you focus on the whole person, and you also focus on integrating the biblical aspects of emotional wholeness as well as the medical. What are the biblical aspects to emotional wholeness?
Well, biblical spiritual approaches start on our knees. I think that it's a point of brokenness, that we can go to God in prayer. We can look for the verses in the Bible which give us hope, and I believe there's plenty of examples in the Bible about people who suffered from depression. David was an example. The Psalms are full of you know, crying out to God, being angry with God at times. Depression even affected David. And he didn't have counseling, professional counseling or medications, but in time, depression will go away if you have long enough to wait. Very often it will go away. In David's life, when his depression resolved, he was, you know, conquering kingdoms. And that's what I think Christians can do, that when they come out of their depressions, that they can get off the couch, they can join the choir again, they can teach the Sunday school class, they can be victorious in their lives again.
And Dr. Hall, in Breaking Through Depression, you have kind of a model called, an acronym called SMART, which stop addiction, medicate chemical imbalances, adjust expectations of yourself, revise your relationships with others, and trust God and track with the Holy Spirit. When it comes to that last, the T there, trusting God and tracking with the Holy Spirit, what are you talking about there? How can we kind of keep a beat on where we are with God?
Yeah. In the Breaking Through Depression, I talk about SMART. Last one is T, and that's my holistic, my Christian spirituality coming through. Tracking with the Holy Spirit to me means mostly beginning in prayer, and I call it expressive, submissive prayer, which is, I like to put labels on things, but express yourself to God. Tell Him how you're
Honestly,
feeling.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then submit to His will. So tracking with the Holy Spirit to me is seeking God's guidance every step along the way. Do I need to see a counselor? Pray, God, you know, is it time for me to see a counselor?
Who should I see?
Who should I see? Yeah, there's a whole chapter in the book on how do you find somebody to help.
Right.
It's a complicated, and it's a personal issue. You want to have somebody you can trust, and you feel good that they're going to lead you in a good direction.
When should someone maybe think of taking medication? And speaking of medication, what is available?
There's a lot of good antidepressant medications available. Maybe 10% of the population is on them right now. It's a very popular American way to deal with depression.
But is that necessarily good?
I prefer a holistic approach, but yeah, I think it can often be good. I think they're probably overused, but I think they're also underused in certain groups. So the most common antidepressants are the serotonin-stimulating antidepressants. They raise serotonin levels in the brain, which seem to be low in people that have depression, and that usually helps them to stop worrying so much. And as I spoke about earlier, stress is one of the things that leads to depression, and if you can calm those worries down with medication, that's usually quite relieving.
Yeah. So in general, though, learning how to deal with stress and how to handle stress is a beneficial thing to do when we're dealing with possible depression.
Yes, it's something you can do to prevent it. There's a genetic tendency that people inherit, just like you inherit a genetic tendency for blue eyes or gray hair. There's a genetic tendency we inherit. You put enough stress on that person, and that tendency gets pushed, and you develop the illness. So yeah, anything you can do to relieve stress, whether it's exercise, meditation, prayer,
diet, right? Eating right, sleeping well.
Coffee.
Yes. Get rid of the coffee.
The coffee's not high on the list there, but the sleeping is. I spend a lot of time talking to my patients about sleep. Did you sleep 8 hours last night? If you slept 8 hours, you're probably doing okay today. If you didn't sleep 8 hours, you're not going to handle the day as well. So sleep is a big restorative.
So all of those things play a part in helping combat depression then? Right.
Yeah.
Now, you also mentioned, and I did not know this, that there are different types of depression. I always thought there was just kind of one general term, but there's different types.
Yeah, there's several types of depression. I guess women experience the PMS thing on a regular basis.
That's depression? Oh, no.
It's not a clinical depression. When it gets really bad, so you have
it could evolve into something like that.
It could. PMS is a natural type of sadness that most women feel several days before each period. But when it becomes intense, when they become oppressed by the depression, we call it premenstrual dysphoric disorder. A lot of mouthful of words. But,
PMDD.
PMDD. And so that's one type of depression. Another dramatic type of depression is bipolar depression, where people go way up or way down, and it can last for weeks or months at a time. That's probably a more complicated type of depression to treat.
Now, you had mentioned that your brother dealt with depression. What would you recommend for people that perhaps they have a loved one, maybe they don't know that they're dealing with depression and not getting help? How can they kind of intervene, and what's the best way to do it?
Yeah, I wrote this book, Breaking Through Depression, for people with depression, but after I got it out and it came out a few months ago, I thought, wow, people are so depressed, they're probably not going to be able to read this. But family members, yeah, need to be involved. People who have a friend or a loved one who has bad depression should understand what depression is and take that to the person who needs the help.
Okay. All right, well, Doctor, thank you so much for coming and being with us today. Again, the name of the book is Breaking Through Depression. Guys, if you'd like to connect with Dr. Donald, you can just visit us online at harvest-tv.com. Click on Show Info in the menu bar, and you'll find an easy way to link to his website. Stay with us. We'll be right back.